Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to the biggest episode of San Bernardino Zoo ever. Today we're going to build a massive night house for kiwis, pangolin, fruit bats and more, and we're going to attempt to build it all in one episode. The guests are on their way, but will they find a completed night house when they get inside? Let's find out. This is the building site. Let's get building. I've been planning this build for so long, I'm so excited to get started on it. We are between the Penguin Cove and the desert house here, and planning is really important for this build because this building is going to contain 2 habitats, a walkthrough exhibit, a standard exhibit, and an acclimatization garden, and we need to get everything into this space here, which is pretty much going to fill this area. And the first thing we're going to do after we've laid out the basics is start digging down the terrain. So we're going to have a nice gentle slope here for the guests to walk down to get into the night house, and then the whole thing is going to be slightly dug into the ground because I want the building itself to have quite a low profile. And then the walkthrough exhibit, which is going to be for the Egyptian fruit bat, is I think 6 meters high. So we're going to dig down the ground even further where that exhibit is so it doesn't stick up too much. And while I put the paths and the barriers in, let's talk about the concept. So this night house has been planned since day one of San Bernardino Zoo. I've only built one before, which was in Tekton Zoo, and that is still one of my favorite ever builds. And I knew I wanted to do an even better one in San Bernardino Zoo. The issue I had was that in terms of animals that combine being nocturnal with being small enough to work in a franchise mode, nocturnal house was pretty limited, and I didn't want to just use the same animals that I used in the Tekton Zoo night house. But then when the Oceania pack came out and the Kiwi was added, I knew that the night house was definitely going to happen here, and I've been waiting for the right time to build it, and that time is this week. If I sound a little frazzled today, the amount of hours that I have put into this build in the past week and a bit is pretty crazy, and sleep has been at a premium this week, but there was so much to get done and I'm absolutely desperate to get it all finished in one episode rather than having to do a 2-parter. The full species list for the house will be the brown kiwi, the Chinese pangolin, the Egyptian fruit bat, and the Goliath bird-eating spider. Pretty decent lineup for a nocturnal house. I've almost seen a kiwi IRL at the night safari in Singapore. I think I saw one of its feet, but he was hiding under a bush for the entire time that I was there, and he just refused to come out. And Chinese pangolins are really rare in zoos and in the wild, so this would be a really cool lineup for a night house, I think. We've got the basic habitat barriers in. What we're going to do now is start working on the interior walls. All the interior walls are going to be black. And the reason for that is in an attempt to combat one of the issues with building a nocturnal house in Planet Zoo. So if you play Planet Zoo, you will have noticed the game's lighting engine doesn't really pay any attention at all to walls and ceilings. If you build a solid concrete box with no windows, no natural light at all, and then put the camera inside it, you can still see when it should be pitch black. So the only way to make a night house look good in Planet Zoo is to make it nighttime, so there is no lights coming in. And even then, it's still brighter than it would be in real life, so having all the walls black helps to keep the place as dark as possible. And we're going to have some really cool lighting in here, which I'm very much looking forward to putting in, using a lot of red and a few blue lights like they do in real nocturnal houses to really highlight certain points and try and keep everything else as dark as possible. This building is going to be circular, as you've probably noticed, and we're using the rotation trick to make sure that all the internal walls are circular as well, so we got nice curves everywhere, everything feels really sinuous, and we're going to use these curves to join each element of the build, the habitats, the exhibits, the walkthrough exhibit, the staff area, onto one continuous wall that goes all the way around it. And with it being black as well, it's just going to fade away into the distance. Should look really good. You can ignore the paths, they're just to tell the guests where to go. Let's put a proper floor in now. This is just a twilight floor piece recolored to be darker, and we're going to put something really cool in here later to really bring it to life. The flat parts are covered in the floor piece, and then over here we've got a slope where the path goes down even further towards the bats. So we're going to use the panels to join these together. So we'll just get this at the right angle so that we can go from the floor piece up here down to a new set of floor pieces towards the bottom. And once we've got the angle right, we can just copy this across and get everything filled in here so that it looks nice and smooth. We don't want it going into the habitat, so we'll stop it there, and then we'll just keep coming down. The angles get a little crazy as we get towards the bats, but eventually we get everything looking nice and seamless. and that'll bring guests down to the bats so that the bat house doesn't have to stick out a huge amount over the rest of the building. And then it's time to move on to the foliage. Now, another thing Planet Zoo takes no notice of is whether plants are inside or outside. They will sway beautifully in the breeze like that, even if they are completely enclosed in a building and there's no breeze. So what I'm doing is finding plants suitable for a forest that don't move in the breeze, so we can put them in the house and they'll look realistic. Speaking of forests, that brings us on to the theme of the night house. Another thing I was really keen to have was a particular theme over and above just animals that are nocturnal. And what I've gone with is the forest at night. So all the animals that live in this night house are animals that live in forests. That's driven my animal choices, mainly because I was desperate for the kiwi to go in, because I've never built for the kiwi before. And that is why we have the Chinese pangolin, Goliath birdeater, and Egyptian fruit bats, and why there's no aardvarks or fennec foxes, despite how much I love fennec foxes. We're working on the main tree here. I'm making a really gnarly strangler fig. I've actually placed it upside down because this one very much moves in the wind, so all the branches and leaves are hidden underground, and the roots are going to serve as branches at the top, and these will all disappear into the ceiling of the night house. There you go, that is the plant palette that we're going to be working with, including these fungi from the Twilight pack, which actually glow in the dark. That's going to look really cool in the acclimatization garden at the front of the night house. Let's build that now. This is going to be the first thing the guests see when they come into the night house, and it's an area where their eyes have a chance to acclimatize to the darkness before they go around and start looking at the animals. This is really important in night houses, going from, especially in Southern California, going from a super sunny outdoors environment to almost total darkness. It takes a while to get used to. You don't want people bumping into each other or just not being able to see any of the animals because they're still blind in the darkness. So this is a nice little space for them. We're going to have some subtle but hopefully beautiful lighting in here, a little garden and a sign to set the scene for the area, etc. So we're just going to create something quite similar to the tree fog oasis, just using these curved pieces so we can get some good curves in here. And then we're going to take some mulch pieces and turn these into flower beds. I find it's always best to use the round mulch pieces for this. They give you a much smoother look than if you use the square ones. I'll just use the square ones if you ever have something that's actually square that needs filling in. So we'll just have random rotation on and copy these all around the next one as well. And then we can get to our plant palette that we just built. So we're going to take the gnarly tree that we made and have this as the main feature of the bed on the right. The ceiling in here is going to be about halfway between the exhibit you can see on the left there and the top of the wall where the bats are going to go. So the top of this tree will be disappearing into the ceiling, which is fine, and the actual roof will be higher than that. It might actually poke through the roof. If it does, we will deal with that when we get to it. And then we're going to use this dead cherry blossom tree on the right. Any sort of gnarly trees go really nicely in here. And with those as the base, we'll start selecting some of the more vibrant and attractive trees that don't move in the wind and use those to fill up these flower beds. Sink some ponytail palms in, of course. Can't build anything without doing that. And then we'll get those glowing fungi as well and put those in here. Can't remember what the species is called, but these are real plants that really do bioluminesce. And then we're going to use a piece that I really love the shape of but hate the color of, so I never use it, which is this mossy log from the South America pack. Because it's going to be dark in here, this super vibrant green, which I don't really like, isn't going to show up like that. It's going to look much darker, and we can start using it. It's got such an amazing texture. We use that to frame where the sign for the area is going to go. And then we're going to use some of the grapevine pieces to get some really vibrant looking shrubbery in at the bottom. I'd forgotten how good these are for things like this until I rediscovered them in my console build a couple of weeks ago. We're going to put some ivy in as well to go around the sign and make it look nice and organic. And then finally, we'll add in some more of the cherry blossom trees. And there we go, that's the entrance garden. Once we've got this lit up, it's going to look absolutely amazing. I said I was going to add something cool to the floor, so let's take care of that now. What I want is glow-in-the-dark footprints for the guests to follow. Problem is, there's no glow-in-the-dark footprints in the game, so we're going to have to make our own. So what we're going to do is look at the glow-in-the-dark pieces in the Twilight pack, and I think this little mushroom will work nicely. We're going to change the angle of this really slightly so we can sink it into the ground, so just the back part shows like this. That will form the back of the foot. Then we're going to take another one and tilt it the other way and sink that down so just this little end part pokes out, and that can be a toe. Then we're going to just move it until we get it in the right position. This is probably the fiddliest thing I've ever done, but we will get there. And once it's in the right place, we can place it down and get 3 more little toes. And then we'll have a little footprint that we can use to guide the guests around, take them to the garden, then to the kiwi, then to the pangolin, and then the spider and the bats. I learned this technique from one of my favourite creators, Wyatt Andrews' workshop, the really realistic zoo signs that we use throughout this zoo, the little round one that we put on a lot of the glass panels that we use. He made those by changing the angle of some of the font pieces just ever so slightly so he could then sync them into another piece and make little words that appear on the sign. So I've used that technique to create this. We're now going to take this one little footprint and clone it so we can create a set of footprints that goes all the way around the exhibit. When these start to glow, they look really cool. Let's move on to the habitats. So we're going to start with the kiwi, and we're going to just use this simple 1 meter wall piece to go over the top of the curved glass barriers that we've brought in here. We'll just rotate these by hand so they line up with the glass, and then move it over the glass, and that will form the top of it. It's simple, it's jet black, it's exactly what we want. And then any gaps, like you can see here, we will use these plaster columns from the Africa pack to cover them up. These are so good for columns and so good for anything that where you need to just have a little touch of finesse to make sure everything looks perfect. Use these pieces all the time. And then we're going to cover up the dividers in the glass with these fake trees, and again get these really dark. Much more interesting than the sort of metal dividers that the game puts there by default. Let's put a door in for the staff. So this wall here joins the two habitats together. So we're going to sink a door into the wall so it's just visible, and that sort of automatically makes it look like the door has been designed to sit into the wall, which is nice. And then we'll move on to the interior of the habitats themselves. We're going to start with something really interesting, a working nesting box. So I've built nesting boxes before for the otters in the islands, but what I want here for the kiwis is one that actually works. So we're going to hide a burrow here, and the kiwis will walk into and out of this burrow when they want to sleep. And then we're going to build a nesting box over the top of it. And the way the burrows work in Planet Zoo, as long as there's a tiny little gap, the normal collision detection doesn't apply, and the animals will just use them, which means we can build something way smaller than you'd normally get away with in Planet Zoo, and we'll actually be able to see the kiwis get in and out of these boxes. I will definitely show you that in the cinematics at the end. It's going to look really cool. So we're going to build it with these pieces so that we can cover up the entrance to the burrow. And then we'll just get a load of wooden plank pieces and build the rest of the box. This is based on an actual nesting box for kiwi, which I saw in their care manual. I think it was at Adelaide Zoo, but I could be wrong. Really, really tiny. They don't need a lot of space. In the wild, they just dig themselves a little burrow. So a tiny little box like this is more than sufficient for their needs. And the hinged roof allows the keepers access to the nesting box when the kiwis are in there or when they need cleaning. There we go, nesting box done. Let's bring some other elements in now. So we're going to bring in the sleeping log that we built for the desert house. This is just a nice little decorative piece. We're going to sink this one down into the ground actually so that it's a bit more in keeping with the size of the kiwis. And then we'll put some more trees and plants in here, start to bring this to life. We'll sink the forage box into the floor as we always do. And then another thing I read in their care manual is that dead leaves are really good for the substrate for kiwi habitats. So we're going to cover this one in as many dead leaves as possible. And then we're going to bring in some rocks. These are actually from the Little Penguin Beach. Really happy with the rock work there. These are just going to be hidden away at the back in the dark. So no need to create completely new rock work for it. We'll just drop these in, and then finally we're going to fill everything in with these arrowwood bushes to give it more of a lush feel. Don't want too much going on in here because it is going to be dark. We want people to be able to see the kiwis. So we'll just put a sign here, and then we'll move on to the pangolins. The main feature in the pangolin habitat is going to be some climbing, because in real life Chinese pangolins are big on climbing. They love climbing. They even have slightly prehensile tails they can hang down from them like binturongs do. Unfortunately, being a base game animal in Planet Zoo, they do not climb. So what we need to do is create something that looks like climbing, but that they can actually walk up, and that will give us the effect that we want. So I've got these planks here, and I've checked with our little pangolin in the background there, and they are able to walk up this. And then we're going to use the bark pieces and spin these round and cover these planks up so it looks like a giant log that they are climbing up. We'll put a herb scent marker right at the top of the log as well to make sure that they actually walk up here. That's going to bring a really interesting dimension to this habitat, I think. You can see the nest box in the back as well. We're going to use that for these guys because they will use those burrows as well. And once we're done with half of the log, we'll just copy it over to the other side and spin it around so we get a nice round looking log. That's looking good. I might add some more bark to the top, but now it's time for the spiders. So I'm going to raise their exhibit off the floor a little because we want this to look realistic, a nice small tank for these pretty hefty spiders. So this path will come up here, and then I'm simply going to delete the path. Might have some issues with guests getting access to it, but I'd rather it looked good and looked realistic than it had direct access to it for the guests from the front. So we'll make it look smaller inside using rocks like we did in Amazonian Giants. And then we're going to start hiding the exhibit box with a whole load of trees, mainly taken from the palette that we created earlier. So this gnarly tree again, we'll use this to cover up the sides. We'll get another one on the other side as well. You can see the exhibit's already looking better, just covering up most of the viewing window with some plaster pieces, but these trees are really going to set it off nicely. We're going to put a tree actually inside the box so that we can have these branches poking out the front, and then we'll use more ponytail palms and both types of ivy to really blend everything together. Let's move on to the final habitat in this build for the Egyptian fruit bat. These little dudes will always have a special place in my heart because I think I'm right in saying I built the first ever Egyptian fruit bat habitat in Planet Zoo when I got early access to the Twilight Pack. I think all the other creators chose different animals to start with, so mine was the first Egyptian fruit bat video that anyone saw, and it was a video I was really happy with as well. So I want to build something else really cool for them today, and what we're going to do is build a giant fake tree that the guests are going to use to actually enter the exhibit. So we're going to do some more rotating of the bark pieces like we did in the pangolin habitat until we get one massive tree here, and then we'll cut a couple of holes in it so that the guests can walk right through the middle of the tree. And then we'll start decorating it with loads of the other fake tree pieces and get another massive gnarly tree into this habitat. I don't know why I associate gnarly trees and nocturnal houses so closely together, but I just can't get enough of them in this build. Here's some more. And then we'll put some vines in as well to really get that sort of nighttime forest feel. I'm also going to use some more of the mossy trees to act as branches, because this tree is so big that these trunks actually look like branches. And then we'll move on to the habitat itself. So what we're going to do is put some of the bats in so we can see exactly where all their enrichment items appear. Choose the ones we want. I really like the water tray there because the bats actually dive down and skim over it and drink from it. So I'm going to move that so it's by the exit so that the guests see it all the way through the habitat, and then we'll start decorating it. I'm going to surround it with fake rocks and turn this into a real feature of the habitat. This is my favourite animation that the bats do. I'm going to load the zoo in sandbox mode in a minute and fill this habitat with bats, and then just watch them drinking out of this so I can make sure that all the rocks are positioned in such a way that the bats don't fly through them. And if we can get that right, again, I'll show you that at the end of the video. But for the moment, we'll just concentrate on making it look good. So I've put a waterfall in there so that the water's got somewhere to come from, and then again we'll get the fake rocks and just start building this up so it looks like a nice pile of rocks that just happens to have some water in it that the bats will be drinking from, rather than a square waterfall attached to a water tray. These walkthrough exhibits seem to split opinion in the Planet Zoo community. Personally, I absolutely love them. They allow Frontier to add animals in that wouldn't work in the normal habitat way of doing things, like these bats and the sloth and the butterflies, and the creative possibilities they enable with the new types of animal and the new types of habitat are so good. Once you realise how to work with the various items that need to go in here, like this pole here, we can cover this up with a tree. We've got ropes going all around, and the final touch in making this look like an organic habitat is that I'm going to use the natural path with the sand, and then we're going to draw in new paths around the rest of this room, so it looks like the guests have multiple routes to walk around, that you can just wander around it and explore the bats, even though in reality there's just one straight path. To sell that even more, we're going to use these little fake rocks with random rotate on as always, and just draw these all the way around the habitat so we end up with our multiple guest paths. I can barely believe I'm saying this, but that is the animal part of this build finished. It is time for the exterior. You may have noticed in the intro, but we are going brutalist for the exterior of this night house. There is just something about brutalism and night houses I think works so well together. So I've made a fairly simple wall here using lots of the plaster pieces. We've got a concrete roof on at an angle that is going to go upwards and meet in a point in the middle. And then we have placed a copy of it on the other side by the desert house. We're going to use the rotation trick to encompass all that we've built today, and wow, we have done a lot of building in this episode so that these walls will fit nicely around this entire building. But first we're going to put the rest of the roof in, so we're just using these concrete panels and they're just going to go slightly up, and we'll get it into the middle and then we'll meet it from the other side. They should meet together perfectly. There we go, and then we can rotate it into place. Let's take a look at it. There we go, that's the first circle done. Now we just need to move up to the roof and do the circle over where the bats are to cover up all the walls in there. Then we're going to copy just the bottom of the roof, colour it all black and turn that into a ceiling. We'll drop that inside and then move on to the entrance. We're going to take one section of the external wall and spin it so that it is straight, and it will meet with another section and create a straight line across the front of this part of the building like so. And then when we delete these two pieces of external wall here, we end up with a nice straight bit that we can put the entrance on. There we go. Now we can put some of the beautiful new glass doors in, a couple of those so that the guests can get inside, and then we will redesign these parts of the wall to fit those doors. So we're going to move these parts of plaster upwards so that there's room for the door, and then we'll start redesigning the others so we get a cool looking shape up here. It's almost like a mixture of Art Deco and Brutalism, which is a pretty strange mix, but I think it looks really nice. If you don't know what Brutalism is, by the way, it's an architectural style mainly from the 60s and 70s, which took the flowing lines of modernism and then decided perhaps flowing lines weren't that important and let's just have big slabs of grey concrete everywhere. It's not the most popular of architectural styles. Probably 90% of it isn't the most pleasant to look at, but the 10% that is some of my favourite architecture, and I like to build in this style when I can. We're going to put a bio roof in and spin this all around the top of the roof, and then we're going to put some signs in on the entrance, one of Christina's incredible fonts there for the actual sign. That is what this exhibit is going to be called, The Forest at Night. And then we'll drop some of the plant panels in as well, start getting a slightly more vibrant look to the front here. I think it goes really nicely with the concrete. And then we're going to move on to the final part of the build. So building a nocturnal house in franchise mode is particularly difficult because you can't change the time like you can in sandbox mode. So somehow we need to build a lighting rig in sandbox mode so that you can see that it works, but then get it back into franchise mode in the exact same place without having to blueprint the entire building. Let's find out how to do that in Franchise Masters. Alright, first we need a light. So we're going to use this European light. This one works really nicely, has a really nice red glow to it, which is what you see in nocturnal houses because animals' eyes are less sensitive to red light. And we're going to make it look a bit better by adding this piece onto the end, and then we can bury it into the ceiling of the various habitats here, and only the black metal ring and the red bulb will stick out. You can see how awesome the lighting looks when you add these in. We'll change the lighting in the spider exhibit to red as well. That's just a normal option on the bulb there, you don't need to do anything special. And then we're going to put some uplighters in as well, just by spinning them upside down. And we'll highlight various trees and branches that we think would look cool with some red light shining on them. We'll do the same in the acclimatization garden, and then we can prepare everything to move it back to franchise mode. What we're going to do is select all the lights we've just put in and this tree here that I just decided to add, put it into one group, and then we're going to pick somewhere really obvious in the build that we're not going to forget, like say the O in zoo, the middle O that is. And then we're going to pick a really obvious piece like this incredibly bright neon tube and place it very precisely in the circle in this O. We're going to add that into the group that we just created. So let's click on this tree, get it all into one group, and then we're going to select the group and save it as a blueprint. How weird does that look? So give it a name that you're not going to forget. Give it a blueprint tag because it needs a tag to save, and then we will save it and then jump back into franchise mode in the real zoo. Then we just need to find the blueprint we just saved. There it is. Put it vaguely where you want it to go, like maybe here, and then we just line it up so that the new piece that we placed is in exactly the right position, and now everything is exactly where it was in sandbox mode, and we have a finished night house. Let's check it out. I cannot believe we managed to get all of this done. I am so happy with it. Let's go inside. Here's the acclimatization garden, some guests getting their eyes used to it, and now they're happy enough to take a picture. And here's the kiwis. They're so cute, the way they just sort of potter about in their habitat. Such unique animals. I've been dying to add these into the zoo for, what, like 6 months now? Here he is in the forage box. I love the way they peck about in here. Let's go and check them out in their burrow. Here they are. They make such fascinating noises as well. I've seen videos of them online where the noises they make are pretty much demonic, which is not what you'd expect from a bird as cute as this. Let's see if they'll come out of the nesting box that we added in earlier. This one's about to leave the burrow. Let's see. There we go. I am so pleased with that. Normally you have to build things so big in Planet Zoo. It's awesome to build something the correct size and have the animals actually use it. Let's move on and check out the next inhabitants of our new night house, the Chinese pangolin. This one is using the climbing log that we built. Really happy with that. I did put bark all over it in the end, and just look at this guy. Absolutely adorable. The little enrichment item that I hid at the front encourages them to walk up and down that log, which is great. If you're arachnophobic, look away now, because we're going to check out the Goliath Birdeater. Spiders just shouldn't be that big. Let's check out the whole interior and make our way down to the Egyptian fruit bats. You may have noticed that my new PC is up and running for this video. We have not had cinematics as smooth as this for a while now. Really happy with how this all looks. The glowing footsteps as well, really cool. They have a lot of glow on them by default, but I turned them down a bit and I think they work really nicely. Let's get into the bats. Here we go. I think this might be my favorite part. Just the way the lighting works in here, and with the water as well, it's really dynamic. Let's check out the bat drinking from it. There we go. Time well spent, I think, getting that work in. And some more shots of the rest of the bat clan flying around here. And we've got a couple of these little cuties sleeping in their nesting box as well. Let's check out where we started today. This was the construction site, and this is where we are now. Excuse the mess in front of the building. I did run out of time to landscape the rest of the area, but I'm very happy that we got the whole of the forest at night built in this episode. Just time to check out the members monolith, and we can even afford to have a jaguar in the background now with our new processing power. Thank you so much to all of you who have joined. I'll see you again next week for some more Planet Zoo. Thanks for watching. Bye.